She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
Hi, I'm Dani Johnson. Welcome to the Dani Johnson Show. School shootings, 23 of them in what, 21 weeks of 2018? Come on, in 21 weeks of 2018, there's been 23 shootings. Hello, that's more than one a week. That's kind of scary, isn't it? You're like, why are you talking about this? Hey, man, listen. I mean, you and I both should be concerned, especially if you are a parent. I'm a mother of 5, grandmother of 8. I've got grandkids in school. And this is like really crazy that this is happening. Some people think it's about guns. Other people think it's about parenting. Some people think it's about the mental and emotional condition of our current new generation that's rising up that's in schools. I want to hear what you think. I have a couple of different opinions about this, but I don't know if you've been given the opportunity to voice how you feel about what's going on. Are you personally scared yourself about your kids being in school? Do you think about, like, gosh, you know, at our school, is there a chance? Are you a teacher? I have a daughter who is actually a teacher. Like, hello, like, this is crazy that we have a profession and we have a world that we're living in, or just United States of America that we're living in today, where our own schools, where our kids are, is not even safe. So does this matter to you? Does it mean anything to you? Do you want to talk about it? 830-315-1557 is my phone number. Again, that phone number is 830-315-1557. What impact is this going to have on our culture, on our nation, on families? What do you think is going to be the result? Do you think, in fact, check this out. This is crazy. So beginning with Columbine in 1999, I don't know how old you are, but if you're my age, 1999 is like, gosh, that was that long ago. Like, I remember when Columbine happened. More than 187,000 students attending at least 193 primary and secondary schools have experienced a shooting on campus during school hours, according to a year-long Washington Post analysis. Think about this, 187,000 students. That's a lot since 1999. Do you think this is going to worsen? Do you think guns are the reason for this? Or do you think it has to do with parenting? Do you think it has to do with the style of parenting? You know, in a little town where we lived up in the mountains, there was one that was prevented. There was a kid who had literally planned it, had everything like in position for it. Fortunately, somebody ratted him out. And yes, the kid went to jail. And this was a high schooler. And we're talking about living in a tiny little mountain town. We're talking itty bitty little town, a small little high school that one of my closest friends' husband works at. And her son-in-law works at this school, and her daughter works at this school. So, I mean, this is like so close to home. Like, none of us really think about, man, what if that could be us? What if that could be our grandchild? What if that could be our husband who's a teacher, or our wife who is a teacher? Are you concerned, or do you think it just doesn't mean anything? Again, my phone number is 830-315-1557. 830-315-1557. We're in the studio right this minute. We would love to hear from you. We want to understand how you're feeling about it, if there's anything you feel like you can do about it, or what changes do you think that actually need to be made. Now, first of all, we've had clients through the years who have had children who were suicidally depressed, and they didn't even know that their child was suicidally depressed. Kind of like Adeline and her son, Sam Bart. When Adeline first came to us, she was well over 300 pounds and really, really short. She was incredibly depressed herself. She was overweight and gaining more weight at the time. She had a very toxic marriage. Her husband had a failing business, and they happened to be thumbing through the channels, watching actually actually the Benny Hinn show, and I happened to be interviewed on that show. And her husband turned to her and said, I think you need to go see this woman. I think you need to check her out. I think you need to go to her seminar, First Steps to Success. He only made $600 a month. They lived up in Pennsylvania. They had no way to be able to afford to do this. And he was a bit older and had some health challenges as well. And so anyway, bottom line is he made a major sacrifice, and he sent her, and I think it was Chicago was her first event. He sent her to First Steps to Success, and everything in her life began to change. I mean, everything. She was such an embittered woman. She was so deeply fearful and depressed herself. She was so consumed with what was going on inside of her that she didn't even know that her 13-year-old son, who was 50 pounds overweight, was suicidally depressed as well. And so sometimes when we're consumed with our own life and our own feelings and our own failures, we can have a child that's getting up, going to school every day, and not even realize that they are also struggling with the same suicidal thoughts. He also had gotten in trouble for selling drugs at school. He had been expelled. He was failing in many classes. She then brought her son to First Steps to Success. And this young man today, he's in his 20s, not only has his life been saved, yes, he lost 50 pounds. He's actually beautifully built today, but yet his whole life changed. He began to find purpose for himself. Now, again, this is a kid that was doing harm to himself and others. He's selling drugs at school. So is it that some of these parents are so consumed with what's happening inside of them that they don't even realize that their child is struggling? Maybe their child is cutting themselves. Maybe their child is doing drugs. She didn't even know that her son was doing drugs, let alone selling drugs on campus. Getting suspended as a what? Middle schooler. Hello, not even a high schooler. He was a middle schooler getting himself in trouble. So I know, as I've seen our clients who, as they've come through these 3-day training seminars to learn better communication skills. By the way, Adeline had also been walked out on her job, suspended 3 times. 3 times suspended with no pay. Her life was a mess. Mind you, through these skills, she found healing. She found restoration. She found a totally different, renewed, restored relationship with her God, understanding who she was. She found identity at First Steps to Success. She also paid off $88,000 worth of debt. She also lost 130 pounds. She also restored her relationship with her husband from toxicity to a wild, amazing, passionate, harmonious marriage. And he ended up dying a 1.5 years later. But thank God, most importantly, that she, as she reached out to her son, she got a hold of grooming the next generation for success. She brings her son to the events, and he begins to open up, and he begins to share with her what was going on inside of him. So I largely think that in some of these cases where these kids are coming to school and shooting people, that the parents don't know how to reach inside of their child's heart to really find out what's going on, that there's not a connection there. There's loneliness there. There's something happening inside of the home that is not healthy. And sometimes people equate healthy as, well, we don't fight. Well, that's my teenager. He's stuck in his room all day playing video games. He won't talk to me. Friend, there's a skill you must learn. There's something that you got to learn in order to get them to talk to you. All right, we've got Amy from Idaho who's got the courage to talk about the school shootings and maybe how she feels about it. Amy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
So what are your thoughts on why these school shootings are happening or what you think that we need to do to change it?
Well, I think some of it, not all of it, of course, but, you talked about disengaged parents. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of parents, at least in the last, my generation and this, new generation of parents have put a lot of their kids in front of screens and, not really monitoring the little things, because I think that a lot of little messages get sent through cartoons and even things that are supposed to be educational that are really subversive, that are contrary to the Word of God. And, those plant seeds in our kids' minds. And then they, and they develop an appetite for that kind of stuff. And it gets more imperative for them. They just want more and more screen time, more of that kind of music they start listening to. just whatever's on the radio and things like that. So I think a lot of those things, I mean, all that stuff, it's not just one thing, but it's a lot of things like that that we just don't monitor as closely as we think. We do. You know, some parents think, oh, yeah, I'm right on top of it. But a lot of things go under the radar because it may be like an adult-level humor in a cartoon that just stays in that child's mind until one day they understand it.
But see, here's the other thing that I think is even more dangerous is that I think a lot of parents don't realize that they are literally programming the thought processes of their child's brain using media.
Exactly.
And they're unconscious of the training and development of the mind that is literally happening. So like when it comes to video games and all the violence that are in them, like studies have proven that violent kids often come out of these types of habits, right? And so when we say, okay, no, I'm on top of it, I'm monitoring it. Okay, so are you saying you're watching this programming with them? And are you asking yourself, I remember this one time that one of my kids had, their friend introduced them to SpongeBob, and I did not allow my kids to watch those kind of cartoons. In fact, they had 30 minutes a day of any kind of programming that they could watch. That was it. And it had to be something educational, and I literally approved and watched with them some of this programming to make sure that this is exactly what I wanted going into their heads. And so my son came home one day like singing all the SpongeBob SquarePants, all this kind of stuff. And so I started to look it up. I'm like, okay, this is wild. No, I'm so sorry. Okay, SpongeBob is a lazy sucker who's always looking to get freebies. That's what this cartoon is programming my son. A future head of the household, a future worker in the marketplace. He is being programmed. And my friend's son is being programmed for laziness. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Either you're not going over there anymore, which again, this is a Christian family, had the same values, all this kind of stuff, but we're now wanting everything SpongeBob SquarePants. Like, do you have any idea who this person is? And when your kids start singing all those songs over and over again, and I had a conversation with them about idolatry. And looking at, man, holding up this cartoon character in such high esteem that you want to be like him, you're quoting him, you want your room decorated just like him. Think about this, what you are being programmed for. Are you being programmed to be a 98%er who's living in mediocrity, who is not living out the fullness of the calling that is on their life? Or do you want to be that rare group of people that's 2% that purposely has their mind programmed for winning? Just as Jesus was programmed to win, the whole world. Okay, just as he was programmed for success. And so often parents literally, because they're overwhelmed or they're tired or they got their own issues. I literally see little ones with their parents' phones. Mom, can I have your phone? Mom, can I have your phone? Can I have your phone? I want to watch something. And they are consumed with it. And their kid is being programmed with messaging that I love the word that you used, Amy, that they get an appetite for. That's like scary. And it's true, right? You get an appetite for what? Maybe lust, maybe sarcasm, maybe abuse, right? Abusing your siblings, right? When you see these things fighting and it's funny, and we're laughing that somebody beat somebody up, or we're laughing because they got in a squabble. Like, what are we programming our kid for? Like, what is going to be the result of this? Because our mind is just like a projecting screen. What goes in will come out. Period. End of story. Amy, I agree with you. I think that largely parents are disconnected from their children and they don't realize the messaging that is training their brain. Is their brain being trained to reign in this world? Or is their brain being trained for mediocrity and to crave and have an appetite for laziness, for entitlement, to crave and have an appetite for mediocrity, crave and have an appetite for compromise? What are we training their minds for? We're going over to Cameron from Dallas, Texas. Hi, Cameron. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dani.
Hi. So what about you? What do you think about these school shootings and what we should be doing about it? Like, what's causing it, or what do you think the solution is?
Well, I mean, we've seen the uptick over the last 2 years,
It's
especially
crazy.
over this year, and the big change is that, back when I was a kid, I mean, of course, when you were young, but when I was a kid, we didn't have the social media technology that allowed us to constantly compare our lives to everyone else around us. You only knew what you saw. You only knew what you interacted with. And so it wasn't until we became constantly aware of everything that was quote-unquote lacking in our life that we started seeing depression in these younger children. They're constantly bombarded with everything that their peers are doing, everything that their peers have. And as parents, we're not stepping up and guarding our children. We're not teaching them where their value, where their self-worth comes from. And we're allowing social media to instill that for us. As a parent, I've got a 3.5-year-old right now that I'm teaching him that his worth, he is valued because he is a child of God. He is valued because he is smart, he is creative, he's funny. Every night before we go to bed, we, as part of our routine, we read books, we sing a song together, we pray together, and then we share uplifting comments as I close the door.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so it's to teach him that, we need to be uplifting. We don't tear down each other. We don't tear down our friends. It was funny. There was a show that another kid in his class was watching, and they were talking about it at school, and he kind of pops up in the middle of school and says, "We don't watch that because it's not uplifting." And a preschool teacher got that back to us, and it was a proud papa moment.
Yeah, it sure was. It sure was, because you're programming your son for the values that you and your wife share. Now, it's so funny. I don't know if I wrote this in Grooming the Next Generation or not. When I go back to read the book, I'll find out. But there's a prayer that I do every night with my kids, and now I do it with my grandkids whenever the grandkids stay the night, and I have them repeat this prayer after me, where I say, "Thank you, Father, for making me smart. Thank you for making me good looking. Thank you for making me strong." Like, literally just putting these words inside of their mind so that mainframe computer that's on top of their head is literally getting programmed to be the identity in which is lined up with who their Father in heaven says they are, instead of who someone at school is going to say they are, who program is going to say they are. And here's the deal. I have to argue with you a little bit, Cameron, because I think that we've always had television in both of our generations that still showed us the other stuff that the other people had. Do you know what I mean? And the comparisons. And we still had the kids at school that maybe had nicer clothes, or their parents lived in a better house or drove a nicer car. We still were exposed to it. Let's say it's not as much, but we still had that kind of exposure. So I really think it lies with the parents not understanding that those are amazing teaching moments, and showing them the difference between true wealth or mediocrity, and that wealth isn't what we show, and that we're not defined by our stuff, and we're not defined by the toys that we have. You know what I'm saying? And these are the things that I worked hard with my kids. That there was not social media when they were really little. Obviously, as they became teens, then it became a really big issue. All right, we're going over to Richard from Dallas, Texas. Dallas is on fire about the shootings. Richard, what do you have to say about the shootings?
That actually the schools in America are extremely safe by comparison to any other place in the world. And I'm talking from several years of experience in law enforcement, and also quite a bit of world traveling in the service.
Now, I would have to agree with you, because there's much more security today in the schools, right, than when I was a kid. There was like none, right? There was none.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But why is this happening? If our schools are safe, how can we have these school shootings?
Well, when you look at the statistics, there's only been really 3 major shootings since 2015.
What are you talking about, 3? I'm looking at statistics. In 21 weeks, we've had 23 school shootings where someone has either died or been injured.
You got to remember, anytime there's a shooting anywhere near school property, whether it's actually associated with the school or not,
okay,
it goes down in statistics as a school shooting.
Okay.
So the ones the media are really harping about are really not the rank and file. There's really only been maybe 37, 39 people killed in what the media portrays as these school shooting situations.
Okay. But Richard, this is still unsettling for a mom. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
My
yes,
daughter
absolutely.
is a teacher.
Absolutely.
My grandchildren are in school. I largely homeschooled my kids. I mean, when I was raising my kids, there wasn't a lot of talk about school shootings. And it's like every time I turn around, it seems this year, it's like, what is going on? Like, this is crazy. So I hear from your defense that we're safe, but why do you think they are happening? Even if what you're saying is true, it's only been a few, why are they happening?
Two reasons. A, as your previous caller said, that people are just being diminished in what they hear from day to day, but also because we are tolerating criminals in school.
Tell me more about that.
I taught as a high school teacher for a year in order to get a certification for a social sciences teacher. And 75% of my classes, no less than 75% of my classes, were populated with felony probationers.
What?
Teenagers that were on probation for felony convictions. A lot of it drugs, but anytime you have drugs, you also have a certain amount of violence surrounding it.
Yes.
So that is part of the situation. We have, for all intents and purposes, allowed our public schools to become more or less prison yards.
Wow. And that's scary. And then we have to ask ourselves, why? Why is there so much drugs amongst these teens? Why have they committed these crimes? What is the root of it?
Families.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's got to be families.
Yeah.
They've just been destroyed by our current culture.
Our current culture, I think, Richard, has an all-out assault against marriage. And more importantly, an all-out assault against fathers. I think the fathers have been targeted. I think they have been targeted through media. They've been targeted through programs. They've been targeted by the women, and the women not even knowing. The women have been targeted to hate their man, not trust their man, to see their man as a weakling, to see him as something that she needs to fix, that she needs to train, that he's not smart. So I think the men have been targeted. It's an all-out assault against them. You weaken the father, you weaken the entire family unit, which is how we end up with kids on drugs or suicidally depressed or on antidepressants who are suffering from suicidal thoughts themselves, and boom, here we go. I believe that's the issue. Wow. Wow. And then we go back to many generations ago, Richard, where the family was strong and the husbands were strong. And I'm not saying the husband was a bully and he wasn't a bigot. The husband was a gentleman with his wife, but he was hardworking out there in the marketplace. He knew who he was, and he stood in as a father, and he fathered his children, and he loved his wife. When we look back to those days, we didn't have stuff like this happening.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Of course, we men have to assume the biggest part of the responsibility of this. Yeah. In the 60s with the sexual revolution, hey, we could get the cow without paying for it. Yeah. We get the milk without paying for the cow. Yeah. We went for it. So we men have more responsibility than anybody else for allowing this to have happened in our culture.
And I believe it's men like you and men like Cameron, who called in right before you, that are going to help turn our nation around and make strong families again and get the message out and help to groom these men to be who they're called to be, who they desire to be, who they want to be. Because they don't want, really, do we really want to get the milk for free without buying the cow? No.
Oh, definitely not.
No. We want an honorable woman, right? They want to be with a respectable woman. They want to be with an honorable woman. They want to be with a woman who loves herself, not in a greedy, nasty, vanity way, but I'm saying that she respects herself. That's really what a man wants, not just the woman that's going to give him what he thinks he wants in the moment. Richard, thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you said, and from your perspective as well, especially being in law enforcement. All right, that's it for us. Listen, friend, I hope I have touched something inside of your heart today, because we have too many unconscious parents out there. We really do. And we think we're doing okay, but what are we comparing that to? You have a mind inside of your home, and the future is inside of your home. And kids go through emotions, especially during those teen years. Do you know how to have those discussions with them? If you're finding that they are withdrawing themselves, if you're finding that there's certain habits that are popping up that are not helpful and conducive for their future, that's not going to help them be set up for success financially, emotionally, mentally, or even in a marriage one day, or even as a parent one day, you got to be watching out for those things, which is why I passionately wrote, again, one of my most favorite books ever, which was Grooming the Next Generation for Success. Gosh, I'm telling you, I passionately wrote this thing. I passionately put in scripts in here on how to draw your kid out from their bedroom and how to draw them out from those dark places, how to have discussions with them that are challenging and hard, and yet you come out so much closer, so much trust is being developed. Have you ever been in that time where you're like, who is this person? What happened to my little boy? What happened to my little girl? I don't know who this person is even living with me anymore. Listen, I can't tell you how many thousands of parents have written us telling us the restoration that has happened, as well as parents who wrote us who said, oh my gosh, I had no idea my kid was in trouble. I had no idea what was going through their head, and this book helped to open my eyes and to be able to dig inside their little mind and heart and be able to pull out what was going on so we could prevent something terrible. I know parents who didn't find out that their kids were suicidal until it was too late. I also know parents that they found out when they're dialing 911 because their child is overdosed. We're talking a 14-year-old. We're talking about kids trying to end their life. I believe that's how we end up with these school shootings. I believe largely it's what we've all just been talking about, but you need to step up, whether you're a single parent or not, and you need to get a hold of this manual that is going to teach you how to reduce the stress in your home and be able to solve these simple things that add a lot of pressure and stress, but it's going to bring more harmony in the house and more love and more trust, and that you're going to feel amazing as a parent going, hey, I did a good job right here, okay? Doing a good job isn't just providing. Doing a good job is much more than that. You want a long-lasting, amazing relationship with your next generation that you've birthed. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. DaniJohnson.com is where you can get your copy of Grooming the Next Generation for Success. And I hope you have an awesome rest of the day on purpose.